Let's move right along into the prelims of this weekend's fights. UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Araujo. And we will kick it off with Mike Jackson versus Pete Rodriguez. Mike Jackson with a 1-1 record, and Pete Rodriguez with a 4-1 record.
Don't forget
One,
Mike's
one,
under
and
one. He's
oh,
1
his
1
no.
0 and 1.
Oh my God, it's no contest
Yeah, that's what makes his record so special. You gotta love it.
against
Three
our boy.
fights, 3 different results.
Against our boy.
Yeah. Hi, you want me to start it off?
Yeah, you know what? Let's. I'll announce him, and then you could actually give us the odds right after that. I think that would be the best.
All right. And then go into my previews, and I'll always be first. You'll always be second. Sorry, people, we're winging this thing without Mike here.
That's right, baby. You're hearing us pissing the wind right now.
Yeah. All right. So, Pete, I got these odds a couple days ago, honestly, when I had a minute, so things could have changed somewhat. But Pete Rodriguez is minus 675. Mike Jackson is plus 475, which, if you know the
Jesus
history of Mike Jackson in the UFC, shouldn't be terribly shocking. I'm not sure he's quite UFC caliber. This is probably his last time in the UFC, assuming it is a loss. But just to remind people who may not know, so Mike Jackson debuted in the UFC with a loss to Mickey Gall back when Mickey Gall was Raw as well. Had a win over CM Punk that then got overturned. Disappeared for like 4 years. And then came back to pick up a DQ victory over Dean Barry, who kept hitting him with illegal shots, and eventually they just DQ'd Dean Barry. So that's his professional resume. It's an odd one. But he gets matched with Pete Rodriguez, who's only 4-1 in his short career as well. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He got smoked by Jack Della Maddalena in his debut. But despite that, he is, as I said, almost a 7-1 favorite here. And I'm not going to get crazy. I am going to pick Pete Rodriguez. But Mike Jackson at plus 500 is not bad, because Pete Rodriguez is far from a proven thing. And yeah, Mike Jackson hasn't looked great, but it's not like he gets washed in there. Like, he hung with Dean Barry in that last fight until the fouls started happening and it turned into a mess. So 5-1 is not bad underdog odds, but I do think Pete is likely the better fighter. He packs big power, and I just keep thinking of the way Mike fights. He kind of keeps his hands down and almost is there to be hit. Like, he almost puts his head out there. And I just think things might end quickly because of that. I think he is kind of playing with fire, and I'm going to say an aggressive Pete Rodriguez gets Mike Jackson out of there in 1 knockout.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you to any extent. I don't think Mike Rodriguez or Mike Jack. I merged them both. I don't think Mike Jackson has what it takes to weather the storm that Pete Rodriguez is going to put on, especially in the first round. If you guys haven't seen the details of this man's record, he hasn't gone out of the first round in his professional record. And in fact, in his amateur record, he hasn't gone out of the first round, or he went out of the first round only once into the second round, and not very far into the second round at that. So the man's lost twice. He's been choked out and he's been knocked out, like Mark said, by Maddalena. Pete Rodriguez is there to fight. Mike Jackson is there to be there and win and kind of ride that wave. He's generally not in there to fuck people up. And that's not the way you want to be against a guy who's in there to rip your head off. So I don't see Mike Jackson being able to stop him. I'm not a particular fan of what I've seen in the cage from him. So I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez also by round 1 KO. I think he puts him to sleep.
All right, and Mike didn't send us a pick for that fight. We have some of Mike's picks, people, but not that one. He started a little further up the card.
Chooch. All right, next on the list, Tatsuro Taira versus CJ Vergara. Tatsuro coming in with an 11-0 record, perfect and spotless. CJ Vergara coming in with a 10-3-1 record. Tatsuro's latest fight was against Carlos Candelario, which was a decision win. CJ Vergara also with a split decision win against Clayton Rodriguez. Let us know what those odds are.
So Tatsuro Taira is favored. He is minus 240. CJ Vergara is the plus 200 dog. You guys know I'm intrigued by Tatsuro Taira. I talked him up a bit back when he debuted. 22 years old, undefeated, as Omar said, at 11-0. Kind of the next hope out of Japan right now. He showed why in his debut. He was sharp. He was fast. He showed you that he was skilled everywhere that fight went. If there was a knock, you could say that he was maybe just a bit tentative, which could be chalked up to the debut. We'll probably find out in this one. But that's why I like this CJ Vergara matchup, because he is not tentative at all. He's a tough, gritty dude who continues to bring it, even in fights that he's losing. He's not going to go away. He's going to make you work. He showed that against Kletzen Rodriguez. That was a contestable decision, but it went his way because of the fact that he was a dog. So I like the test for Tatsuro Taira, but I do think he'll pass it. I think that the grappling may end up being the X factor in this one. Vergara, as much as I like Taira on the feet, I feel like Vergara is kind of quirky and has success on the feet. So I think the grappling may be the difference here. I think Taira will be better in the transitions, in the scrambles, which I do expect to happen. I think he could even find a sub. Almost picked that, but I'm just going to say it is a UD for Taira in another fight where he kind of shows off the full bag of skills of how he can fight anywhere the fight goes.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I think Taira is just a better overall fighter, but I also had the same feeling about his debut performance too. I figured he just had some nerves because he's usually, at least in the videos that I've seen of him from Japan, he seems like a very aggressive fighter, and I felt like he was a lot more, like he paced himself a little bit more. He was a little bit more, I don't know if it's tentative is really the word, but definitely didn't feel like he was pushing the gas pedal the way I've seen in some of his other videos. Hopefully he's gotten out of that if that's the case, and we really see him kind of turn it up right from the jump. So the real problem, into you've already said, is Vergara doesn't go away. He's very, very difficult to put away. He's in there even when he's injured, when he's hurt. The man is still throwing shit that'll definitely put you on wobbly legs if it lands clean. So I think Taira has a better. I think he has a better overall skill set. I think he's technically more sound, and I think even with Vergara's kind of unorthodox zombie style that he has, I think he just ends up being a punching bag for the most part. So I'm going to go with Taira. I think he gets it done in the second round. I think we'll go TKO.
Nice.
Let's see. Next on the list, is it Piera?
Yep.
Piera Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. Piera La Fiera. I love that. That's a fun one right there. Piera with a perfect 8-0 record. Last fight was against Kay Hansen with a unanimous decision. And Sam Page Hughes, less of a fan of that one, with a 7-4 record and a recent win over Elise Reed via TKO, elbows and punches of the third round. Take it away.
What is La Fiera?
I want to say it's not fire. Let me see. The Rage?
Because that's what I thought, and I was like, nope, it's not fire. So what is it? You're the worst Spanish speaker that I know.
Yeah, that's probably true. Listen.
Unless she's...
Fierce.
Wait, what is she? Is she Brazilian or Mexican? Huh?
Venezuelan.
Oh, Venezuelan. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 0 for 2. All right. Continuing. She is the favorite here, Piera. She is minus 190. Sam Hughes is plus 155. Sam Hughes is going to be looking to continue her run since joining Fortis MMA. She started 0-3 in the UFC, switched things up, and immediately won 2 in a row, and honestly looked significantly improved. I've said it before on here. She's letting herself fight now. She used to seem kind of tight, maybe a little too stuck to game plans. Now she is letting herself flow, and it's paying off, and her skills are showing through more. On the other hand, I was somewhat impressed by Piera Rodriguez's debut, which was the W over Kay Hansen that you mentioned. It's tough to formulate an opinion on how good Kay Hansen is exactly, which makes it tough for me to evaluate how meaningful that win was. But she is undefeated. She's 8-0. She looked like she was comfortable in the wrestling with Kay Hansen, which I think matters here because I'm sure Sam Hughes will look to test that. So I don't know. I'm torn. In my head, I thought Piera was bigger, and then because Sam Hughes is not that big, I looked. It's actually Hughes who's bigger, so Piera's pretty small. I guess I forgot that from watching her fight Kay. So the size shouldn't really be a factor. I do think the fight's going to happen in close, which is usually what Hughes wants, but I kind of just keep seeing in my head that it might be Piera who has the more impactful moments and ends up stealing like a close fight that way. Like she lands the 2 or 3 biggest shots of the fight, even if Hughes is maybe more so winning second to second. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say it's a close fight. I will say Piera Rodriguez wins by split decision.
Yeah, I like it. So when you were talking about it was hard to take away what, from the Kay Hansen fight, I liked her technique in that fight. And that was really what I took away because, to your credit, Kay Hansen isn't necessarily the biggest test as far as, one of those quality wins that we've talked about. But what she did show as far as her performance was concerned left me wanting more. Like I wanted to see more of her. Yep. I was definitely impressed with what she brought to the table in that fight. So a fight with Sam Hughes, like Sam Hughes is jacked, dog. Like Sam Hughes is strong as shit. And so the wrestling is definitely going to play a factor in this, especially the way she's been fighting in her last couple fights. I want to say that there's going to be a lot of early adversity when it comes to her trying to get Sam Hughes off of Piera, right? Like there's going to be a lot of moments where she's going to want to go for the takedown and Piera's going to end up fighting it. And I do think that Piera's going to end up throwing back. There's going to be a lot of countering in those moments, but I think that doesn't last for the entire fight. Where I'm struggling is, can she do that for 2 rounds at least? Or are we going to see her fade in round 2 and then lose 2 and 3? I think that's really where my biggest issue is at this point. Because I do think Piera comes out of the first round with a win. But 2 and 3, I think, are the ones that are going to be heavily contested by the end of it. So just based on things that I've seen, and I guess I've been rooting for this girl even in her last fight, I'm going to go with Piera Rodriguez. I do think it's going to be a split decision as well. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Sam Hughes comes out with a decision on this one either.
Yeah, neither would I. This is the first of like 7 or 8 fights on this card where I literally was like, fuck, I'm really torn. Like, there's a lot of closely matched fights.
Yeah. Do we know who runs Fortis? Who runs Fortis MMA? Do you know?
Yeah. I always get these 2 names confused. One of them is the dude who died, and one is the dude who runs Fortis. Is Saif Saud the guy that died, or is that the guy that runs Fortis?
He must be the guy that runs Fortis, because I don't think Saif Saud died.
Who died that was like Yanez's coach?
Oh, I don't know. He was a boxing guy, and I think he was a bigger guy, but that wasn't Saif Saud.
I think they have similar names. They both start with S. For some reason, my brain stays mushing them together.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure. But okay. Right. I thought I can't remember what.
Saif Saud is the Fortis MMA coach.
Okay. I keep thinking, I don't remember what James Krause's gym name is.
Yeah, what is his gym name?
Yeah.
Saul Solis. So you see why I get them
Saul,
confused.
Yeah.
Double S's. That's Yanez's coach. What is James Krause gym called? Now you have me curious of that. Glory.
Definitely didn't remember that. Jeez.
Yeah, I didn't either.
All right, moving down the list here. Our next fight is Joanderson Brito versus Lucas Alexander. Joanderson Brito coming in with a record of 13 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. His last fight was against Andre Fili, who he caught clean with some TKO right in the first round.
With some TKO?
With some TKO. And then Lucas Alexander is making his debut here this weekend. Like I said, he was filling in for somebody. Thank you. Shows you how good my memory is. Said that like 30 minutes ago. So he has a record of 7-2. He is currently on a 5-fight win streak for what it matters. And his last fight, he won via TKO arm injury. So I wonder if he broke somebody's arm or something to that effect. But he has basically finished 3 out of his last 5 fights too. So he's got a little bit of momentum on his side here. Joanderson Brito has only won his last fight and then lost the fight before against Bill Algeo, whichever, if I remember right, was a scrap.
It was Brito came out really hot in the first round and then kind of faded, and Algeo just weathered it and took the next 2.
But Algeo got his ass beat in the first round, didn't he? Like, wasn't he wobbly and all this stuff?
He could have been. I don't know if it was ass beat, but I do remember thinking that Brito came out really hot. You could be right.
Yeah, I don't remember though. I've seen so many fights at this point. It's all just violence. All right, man. What are those odds?
So it's pretty clean in this one. Brito is exactly a 4-1 favorite, minus 400. Alexander is a 3-1 dog, plus 300. So as we said, this was originally supposed to be Brito against Melsik Bagdasaryan, which I would have loved. I was into that fight. Unfortunately, Bagdasaryan falls out. We get Lucas Alexander filling in on short notice. Not going to pretend I am familiar with him. His resume is not exactly one that is full of relevant names. No one to really look at and hang your hat on to say, okay, he's been in there with this guy, been in there with this guy. So I thought he was going to be a bigger dog than this, but I think he does have a size advantage. It's funny, he's kind of so unknown that I can't even find his reach. I can see that he's 3 inches taller than Brito. I'm imagining he's going to have a reach advantage as well, so maybe that's what plays into these odds being not even wider. But I'm going to assume he's not on Joanderson Brito's level. I'm going to assume fighting a guy who comes out as aggressive as Brito does is probably not a great recipe for a short-notice fight, especially where he didn't even really get to scout the guy. What I will say is I bet Alexander comes out hot and tries to match that because he knows what he's got to get through here. So, especially when you haven't got the train full, you might as well come out and go balls to the wall in round 1 before you may get tired. So we might see a car crash in round 1 in this fight. But I'm going to go with Brito. I'm going to say club and sub round 1.
Nice. Yeah, I find Brito to be pretty damn well-rounded, all things considered. I think if it hits the ground, I think he's liable to take anybody's arm or neck home with him. And when he stands, that dude looks like he hits hard as shit.
Yeah.
And he's another one that's really not that small for 145. Even at 5'8", I feel like it's a good size for that weight class. So I have a little bit more trust in Brito. I also don't really know Lucas Alexander. It does look like he scraps though. I mean, like I said, he's got 3 TKOs. The arm injury, I'm assuming, didn't come from them hugging. So I'm sure there was some violence involved to get there. So he seems like he's a banger, but I think Brito is just overall such a great fighter that I don't really think it's going to matter. So I'm going to go with Joanderson Brito. I also think he's going to finish him. I just think it's going to happen in round 1.
I said round 1 too.
Oh, I thought you said round 2. Fuck.
No, round 1.
Yeah.
I said club and sub. That's probably what you're thinking of. So what are you saying, KO?
Yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot of erratic movement going on in there, and I think Brito is just a little bit more accurate, and I think he catches him coming in and puts him out.
Yeah, like it.
Right. Next on the list for the, I believe, 3rd time, Nick Maximov versus Jacob Malkoun. Nick Maximov, for those of you who don't know, is fighting out of the 209, out of the Nick Diaz army. Wasn't super impressed with his debut, but I was hopeful that he would show us something more. His last fight against Andre Petrosky, he got completely run over and choked out, so basically run over in his own house. It wasn't a great look. I'm sure he had some words afterwards, with the team about, what is going on with his jiu-jitsu. But he gets another chance to perform here against Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun has 6 wins and 2 losses. His last fight was against the great Brendan Allen. But he did make it through, and he lost a decision win to him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens between these two guys here. Mark, what are the odds?
So surprisingly to me, and I'm assuming surprisingly to you, Nick Maximov is the favorite. He is minus 150. Jacob Malkoun is plus 120. I do really like this matchup. I'm very intrigued to see whose wrestling can prevail here. Maximov, as you said, guy was 8-0. He picked up his first career loss in dramatic fashion in his last fight, getting subbed by Andre Petrosky in about a minute, so we will see how he bounces back here. Jacob Malkoun, you mentioned lost to Brendan Allen, but he almost managed to steal a decision off of Brendan Allen. So it was almost impressive in a loss. So they're coming from different places into this fight. The size does point to Maximov. He's 3 inches taller and 3 inches longer. Granted, he's not really much of a striker. Neither is Malkoun, but if this thing is on the feet, I think it's probably Malkoun who has the advantage, so maybe that reach doesn't matter all that much. But I do think the wrestling is going to play here. I feel like they're just both such natural wrestlers that I can't imagine this being one of those fights where two guys who can wrestle end up striking all fight. I just think their minds are so set on taking the fight to the ground that's what we're going to see. So yeah, I was impressed by Malkoun, but the way he fights is not my favorite. He has a game and it works, and his single leg is really effective, but he has kind of that drag it out, lay a little bit type of style. And as much as I didn't expect to be picking Nick Maximov when I first thought about this fight, because I'm not super impressed by him, I'm kind of thinking that style may actually make this a good matchup for Maximov, because he can kind of match the wrestling more or less and wait while Malkoun is not necessarily being super aggressive, and wait to find an opportunity to attack. And Maximov is the one who has the more dangerous grappling for sure. So it could absolutely be Malkoun dictating and kind of just showing that he's the better wrestler and the stronger guy and winning a decision that way. But I think I'm going to say that Malkoun is like a little too lazy in a moment and gets caught in something by Nick Maximov, because he is an opportunistic grappler, if nothing else. So I'm going to say round 2 sub for Nick Maximov to bounce back.
I don't think Maximov has any wrestling at all. I was less than impressed when it came to his ground game, because that's where I thought his bread and butter would be. I thought we would be able to see something impressive, but like the most impressive thing is how much he can bend. Like, he's flexible as hell, but all he did was sit on the ground and just be bendy. He didn't do anything. So I don't really have. I honestly think this fight's going to be a little boring, because to your point, Malkoun is.
I agree.
I just think he's going to be super stale. Malkoun is basically just somebody who would definitely lay on top of you if given the opportunity. And I don't think Nick Maximov's ground game is particularly aggressive. And I don't think he's going to be going for submissions as much as one would think somebody out of a Nick Diaz Academy would be going for. I would love to be proven wrong, but there's nothing that I've seen that would make me think otherwise. Side note, they have Jacob Malkoun as 6'1" on Sherdog. On Wikipedia, he's 5'9", and in the UFC's website, he's 5'9".
Yeah, that's what I was just looking, because when I was just reading that off, I was like, didn't I have Malkoun at 5'9"?
So crazy. That is a massive disparity in the height reporting there. So, Jesus.
Wow. I mean, it's got to be Sherdog that's wrong, right? If all those other places have him at 5'9".
I would have to think UFC has it right. I mean, they're the ones who are actually like measuring him. So
wow.
But when you were talking about how Maximov was bigger, I was like, where? Man, it's 6'1" over here. This man is huge.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm not particularly thrilled for this one. We'll be lucky to see a finish in this fight, as far as I'm concerned. But when I wake up, I expect that Jacob Malkoun will have won the decision. So I'll go with that.
Fair enough. Literally was 51-49 on my coin, and if it goes the Malkoun way, it will be a boring decision, I'm sure. So, yeah,
I agree. All right, next on the list, Raphael Assuncao, relegated to the prelims.
Yeah, I don't understand.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Just how dare you? And not even, when they at least make them the headliners of the prelims, like I don't feel as salty about it because
It is the headliner of the prelims. It is the headliner of the prelims.
Oh, I thought it wasn't. I thought there was one more right afterwards.
I don't think so. No, it's the headliner of the prelims.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it says Mana Martinez and Brandon Davis are next after Raphael Assuncao and Victor Henry.
That's the opener of the main card.
Did they move it? Because that's not what it is on the UFC website.
That's what it was when I typed this up like 3 hours ago.
They said, fuck your typing, and they changed it.
Oh, dude, they made the main card only 5 fights instead of 6.
So I will return to my initial, how dare you? How dare you? You could have definitely made that fight the headliner. Look, I've spoken about Mana Martinez many a times. I'm a fan. I like his dog. I like the way, he comes in there to fight. But it's Raphael Assuncao. Like, why do we need to have this conversation here? I don't understand.
Yeah, there's only arguably 3 fights on this card that should be higher on the card than this fight. Like, it's not just Raphael Assuncao. It's Victor Henry, who just came in and debuted by beating Raoni Barcelos, and now you're giving him a fight against a ranked fighter. Like, why do you have them relegated to the prelims? It makes no sense.
We understand that Raphael Assuncao has lost his last 4. Like, I get it. But he's lost against Ricky Simon, who is an absolute animal. He's lost to Cody Garbrandt, who, it happens. Cody gets one every now and again. Corey Sandhagen, who is an animal. And Marlon Moraes, who somebody had to lose against him. So these are good names that he's losing against, and I think people are just not showing him the respect that he deserves. The man has 27 wins and 9 losses overall, most of which are in the UFC. For those of you who are not aware, the man has been in the UFC since 2011. He's put in his work.
He was ranked like number 2 or 3 at one point in time. Like he reached nearly the peak.
Yeah, he was like the Joker of that division, just like always there, but never the king. You know what I mean? Like always there. Yeah. But I just think people are just really forgetting how nasty Assuncao really is. To be fair, Victor Henry, that performance against Raoni Barcelos was pretty nasty from what I remember. And I think I was very, very surprised. Like I remember feeling to myself, who the fuck is Victor Henry?
So was everybody, dude. He was short notice.
Where did he come from?
Yeah.
So I'm excited, man. Hopefully the man at this point, right, he's got a full camp. This wasn't a late notice. So we're going to see what I would assume is the best of what Victor Henry has to offer. And if what he did against Raoni Barcelos was short notice, I don't understand how this is not the headline. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know about headliner, but yeah, it should
be.
I
meant of the prelims.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I got to pick something, right? So if I'm going to be picking, dude, I think this is a scrap, man. I think this is going to be a real test for Victor Henry, and I think it could go either way, if we're being completely honest. I think Victor Henry's striking is completely dynamic. I think if there's one thing that Assuncao has is experience in the UFC, but if we look at their records, Raphael Assuncao 27-9, Victor Henry 22-5. They're not really that dissimilar as far as their mileage is concerned. But UFC experience can sometimes make or break the difference. So I'm going to go with Raphael Assuncao by a hard-fought decision. I would not be surprised if Victor Henry could pull it off, though.
So you may be surprised to hear that Victor Henry is a minus 340 favorite, which is a bit wild.
Rude. It's rude, Mark.
Raphael Assuncao is plus 260. He is 40 years old. He hasn't won a fight in 4 years, as we said, but Omar listed him off. It's a very solid list of opponents that he's been losing to. Granted, still not a great sign that he hasn't won a fight in a while. And then Victor Henry, as we were starting to say, came on scene in short notice, fought Hani Barcelos, wasn't given much of a chance, looked incredible, so impressive. He pushed a ridiculous pace throughout the whole fight. And Omar mentioned the career record of Victor Henry. His pre-UFC resume is actually legit. Like, there's some names as you scroll that thing. Kyler Phillips is on there, for example. He beat Kyler Phillips pre-UFC. So I don't know how it took this man until he was 35 years old to get this chance, and he had to do it as a late notice replacement on top of that. It doesn't seem to make a ton of sense to me, and obviously he showed right away that he should have had this chance probably a while ago. With all that being said, it does feel weird on paper for me to be picking a guy who most people didn't know existed one fight ago against a perennial top 10 fighter in the UFC. But that's what I'm going to do. I agree that he should be favored here. I think that he's too dynamic for the current version of Raphael Assuncao, and I just think if he pushes that same pace that Assuncao can't hang anymore with a pace like that, he's always dangerous. But I think he's just going to get a bit overwhelmed in this fight. I think he's going to drop rounds. I will say it is at least 29-28, if not even 30-27 in favor of Victor Henry.
Man, I really hope he puts on a y'all must have forgot performance, because the disrespect from all angles is just out of control. That line is rude.
The line's rude. Wild.
All right. So apparently, headlining the prelims, Leo Mana Boy Martinez. It's a long one there. Versus Brandon the Killer B Davis. We got another Killer B? I don't know.
Who else is Killer B? Oh, Ben Saunders.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I can't take Ben Saunders' name. Nope.
That's a very specific nickname.
Nope.
Like, you can't.
Nope.
Yeah. Weird. All right. Mana Martinez is 9-3, and Brandon Davis is 14-9. Mana coming off of a unanimous decision loss against Ronnie Lawrence, and Brandon coming off of a TKO loss, elbows and punches, against Batterell Dana. Dana. I actually kind of remember that one. That was a bad one. He didn't look particularly fantastic in that one. But tell us what the odds are in this one.
So they're fairly close. Mana Martinez is minus 155. Brandon Davis is plus 130 as the dog. I'm assuming this fight is as high as it is on the card because they expect it to be a scrap, which it very well may be with the two styles of fighter that are in this fight. Brandon Davis is 2-6 in the UFC, but he is live. Like, he gives guys trouble. He's kind of always in the fight. He even gave Giga Chikadze some trouble. The issue is then he kind of looks very bad at times as well. Like, he's a very hot and cold fighter even within the fight. Like, he'll figure something out and he'll look great, and then the guy he's fighting will figure out how to counter that and he'll look lost. So he's a tough fighter to read. But with that said, I feel like we kind of know who he is at this point. We kind of know his level. I don't expect him to be improving at this stage of his career necessarily, whereas Mana Martinez is a young fighter. He's an improving fighter. He looks better each time we see him. So I think it's kind of just one of those arrows going in opposite directions fights. And I think also the fact that Mana is a pressure fighter helps, because Brandon does well when he can play that role, and I don't think he really gets to here. Plus, Mana showed, even in his last fight in a defeat, that he will not go away. I mean, he almost ended up finishing that thing in round 3 after getting drubbed in the first 2 rounds. So I don't worry about him weathering any storm that might potentially come from Brandon Davis. So I think he can take the fight over as it gets into the latter portion of the fight and take a decision. I will say 29-28, Mana Martinez.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Martinez is just he's more of a dog. I don't expect him to quit at any stage. I think, like you said, like Davis, it almost seems like Davis will get frustrated with the fact that somebody has figured his shit out, and he's just like, man, fuck this, and just sort of like, kind of coasts his way through the rest of it and doesn't really try to adapt to the changes that are being made throughout the fight. And not to say that Mana does, but Mana is so wild and so such a dog that he just comes forward and fights regardless of, what changes are being made. I don't think it really affects him to that extent, at least not at this point in his game. So I'm going to go with Manny Martinez. I do think at some point he overwhelms Davis. I think we can actually see him get a TKO in this fight. I'm going to go with round 3 TKO.
Nice. Oh, and we have picks from Mike starting now. Mike is going the opposite way of us. He is going for a UD for Brandon Davis.
Interesting.